Two things are coming to an end, the year 2020 and the second season of his Dark Materials. Unlike the year 2020, though, I am sad to see his Dark Materials go. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to Thumb Together TV. My name is Andrew Fantasia. Today we're going to be talking about his Dark Materials, Season 2, Episode 7. Let me make sure I say this right. Aesahattr together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. Aesahattr is difficult to pronounce, but not difficult to enjoy. Let's get right into it. Well, I say enjoy, but that's kind of a cruel word, because we lost two people this episode, didn't we? We had some deaths. Some more deaths if you count some witches whose names that I don't really know offhand. But we lost some people, some good people, in this fight to do what we don't even know what they're fighting for yet to do. That's what Season 3 is all about. We lost them. Let's get into it. Lyra and Will are continuing to travel more and more with these witches in this mountainous region, and unfortunately, everybody's journey is about to be stopped short. This is, after all, the ending of the middle chapter of a trilogy, and usually what that means is that the only person who gets their way is the bad guy. And that's kind of exactly what happens here. When Lee Scoresby and Mr. Joffrey crashed in that hot air balloon, we were wondering if they would be able to walk away from that in one piece. Well, the good news is, yeah, they walked away from it in one piece, but they didn't walk very far. If you're just joining us and this is your first episode of His Dark Materials, breaking news, the Magisterium is a bunch of douchebags, and those douchebags have guns. And all of a sudden you see all these Magisterium folk come out of the trees, soldiers blaring, guns ablazing, and they're opening fire on Joffrey and Lee Scoresby. And as much as they put up a good enough fight, it's not quite a good enough fight. And while Lee heroically decides to stay behind and draw their fire so that Joffrey can continue on with what they have to do, it means we see the end of our boy Lee Scoresby and his demon Hester. Now, this was a part in the book that always kind of hit me the hardest because I love Lee Scoresby, and the fact that he dies both times that I've read these books, his death surprised me both times. Like, I liked him so much that I forgot he died the second time I read the books. At least now, looking at this show, I could kind of brace myself and be like, this isn't going to end well for Lee, Andrew. Get your affairs in order. This is it. Lee's done. No more cowboy. I guess in hindsight, it's a good thing that the crappy old early 2000s movie didn't do so well, because then we didn't have to get to the point in that story where we see Lee Scoresby dying. Because that would have been sad too. That's Sam Elliott, man. I don't want to see anything bad happen to him. But I don't even want to see anything bad happen to Lin-Manuel Miranda, even less. And I still had to watch that, and that was heartbreaking. So Magisterium, I got my eyes on you. I'm coming for you. I am coming for you. Luckily, though, Lee's death is not quite in vain, because Joffrey does get to eventually stumble upon where the kids are. And lo and behold, guess what? Guess who he is? Joffrey is just a sort of, not even a portmanteau, just kind of a squished amalgamation of the word of the name John Perry. Because that's who he is. He's John Perry. He's Will's dad. And we finally get Will to interact with his dad and to say all the things he wanted to say. What I really liked about this scene was that I feel like any movie or TV show adaptation of this would fall trap to making the scene too rushed. And this scene felt incredibly not rushed. It actually felt very long. I got to a point where I'm like, wow, we've been sitting here for a long time just with Will and Joffrey just talking to each other. And that's good. I'm not complaining. I just feel like we've been trained as audience members for scenes to not drag out this long, especially if it's just two folks talking in a canyon. But we can't be greedy. We can't be selfish viewers and being like, I want more action. I don't want them to talk. We can't be like that, because guess what? Those two characters, they need this, man. They need to have this talk, and it needs to last as long as it's lasting. In fact, I could have stood for it lasting a little bit longer, but I think it ended right where it needed to end. Like, I wouldn't have complained if it lasted longer, is what I'm saying. It hit the right emotional beats, and I think that if it had been rushed, if this had been in a movie, I really believe that they would have kind of taken their liberty with the emotional beat, and we would have ended up with something that wasn't quite as powerful. But Will meeting his father and finally coming to terms with him and being like, what did you do? Why did you leave? And making peace with that, because that has been his driving factor since we've met him in, I think, the first episode. We just know that Will doesn't know where his father is, and that is tearing apart his household. Now that's no longer tearing apart his household, and it's no longer tearing apart him as a person. So what does that mean when the one thing that has been driving this human being since the moment we met him in season 1 has suddenly been resolved. What does that mean now? That's the beauty of good storytelling, and that's the beauty of dropping this moment in this particular part of the trilogy, because now we gotta wait on this juicy cliffhanger to find out where season 3 takes Mr. William Tiberius Perry, and if that's really his middle name, whoa. Now, they did something a little different in the books, and frankly, I think I like this way better than the book. I'm not sure yet. I have to reread it again, but in the books, the way Joffrey dies is there's a witch who he loved, and there was this scorn. A witch scorned is not, you don't want that as your enemy, and she kills Joffrey and then kills herself because she's in so much grief. It's a very Romeo and Juliet, but kind of more twisted kind of thing going on. And this was just plain and simple, one of the Magisterium soldiers caught up to them and shot Joffrey in the back, and he sacrificed himself because the gun was going to hit Will, but Joffrey's like, no, you're not touching my son, and he spun himself around. I like this better because of that. I like it because it ends with that sacrifice that shows as his last action in this earthly plane, Joffrey is proving, I'd never stopped loving you, Will. I never stopped loving my son, even though I left and I was gone. I tried to come back. This proves I'm not just some deadbeat dad. I love you and I'm going to give my life for you. I think that was a much more powerful way to cut off Joffrey's story. He's the kind of character who, both in the book and in the show, we don't really get to know him all that well. We hear about him a bunch, and then we meet him and he's like, hey, what's up? I'm weird and kooky. Look at my hood. And then he dies, like, almost right away. Both instances give us closure for Joffrey, and more importantly, closure for Will, because he is the person that we're following through all of this. And then, of course, there's Lyra Belacqua, Lyra Silvertongue, who spends most of this episode playing it pretty low-key. She's just along for the journey. They're continuing their quest through these beautiful jungle mountains. Like, man, this world looks gorgeous. And she's just kind of taking it chill, enjoying having her chats with the witches, enjoying even more having her chats with Will. And her and Pan are talking about change, because change is coming. She's getting older, she's getting more mature, and that means Pan's going to lose the ability eventually to morph into different shapes, and he's going to have to settle on a shape. And that scares him. Pan says a beautiful thing. He says, I don't want things to change. And that's so powerful coming from Pan, because he's this magical entity. He's this piece of Lyra's soul, this chunk of her spirit, and yet even he, this supernatural little animal that can be whatever kind of animal he wants, is afraid of that change because of what it means for him, what it means for Lyra, and maybe what it means for the world. We don't know. It would have been so easy to give that line of dialogue to Lyra, because she is still a precocious child who would say something like that. But Pan has always been the voice of reason between the two. So for him to say something along those lines, to say, I'm afraid of the change, just adds so many more delicious layers to the lasagna that is Lyra and Pan. And yeah, inevitably, Pan's gonna have to pick a shape and stick with it. Does that happen in season 3? I ain't telling. I don't want to spoil anything for people. But season 3 is gonna be a hell of a ride. And if this is any indication, it's gonna be full of angels. In a really nice surprise in this montage at the end of this episode, we saw Lord Asriel again. James McAvoy came back to do this one little monologue and this beautiful sort of rousing, join me and we'll go to war kind of speech. But a wonderful twist on that I absolutely enjoyed is he's talking to an empty canyon. He's screaming into an empty canyon. He's desperate. He's not confident. This is the first time we've seen Asriel not quite confident that his plans are going to shape up the way he wants them to. And as he looks out over this giant, empty, hellish-looking, scary canyon, I don't know what he's doing there. Get out of there, Asriel. He pleads his case to the empty void, and when it looks like his pleas fell on deaf ears, that changes. And we catch a little bit of a glimpse, like we've been getting all season, just a little hint of the angels. I love what this season has done with the angels, because it's really been delivering them to us in tiny snippets, whether it's just hearing the word angel for the first time, or seeing them far away as they race through the sky, or seeing that ghostly apparition of one of them appearing, kind of maybe sort of appearing behind Mary Malone last week, to now finally seeing an outline of one, not quite getting a face or any defining features, but an outline, kind of like just seeing, you know, a Christmas ornament where it's like, yeah, that looks like an angel. I guess that's what that is. Angels are really tricky to do, man. In fiction, one wrong turn and you derail the whole convoy. So you got to be really, really careful how you handle angels. And so far, they're easing us into it. We have been, I think, appropriately lubed up and ready to get some angels all up on us. And we're still going to have to let that lube settle for a bit because Lord only knows when season 3 is coming out. HBO is great, but they're not exactly punctual. You get their seasons when you get them. It's about quality, not about delivering them on a schedule, which I like. So we'll have to wait and see. Lord knows how long to find out what happened to Will. We'll have to wait and see to find out what the angels are like and how Lord Asriel is going to use them to further his plan. What is his plan? It's complicated. I wish I could explain it to you in some kind of profound way, but I can't. You're just going to have to watch and we'll figure it out together, I guess, because, you know, 2 readings in and I still don't quite grasp how these books really come to their own and what they're trying to tell, especially in the Amber Spyglass. It's going to be a bit more of a way to find out where Mary Malone ended up because she had dropped those girls off and ended up somewhere slightly different. And we're going to have to wait to find out what happens to Lyra because Lyra, like I said, the villains win at the end of this season and Mrs. Coulter has taken Lyra. She's finally found her. She sicked some specters on the witches to get rid of them and Lyra is now locked in a box with Coulter and the monkey heading, I don't know where, probably nowhere good. I know there's a huge camp of people who don't see Mrs. Coulter as a villain. They see her as like an anti-hero or just a very dark hero. And I can totally understand that. But at the end of the day, Lyra is our hero. You know, villain or no villain, Coulter notwithstanding, Lyra is our hero. And when we see Coulter be abusive, physically and verbally abusive to her monkey, we have to remind ourselves that is a part of her soul. She is putting that abuse onto herself. So if Coulter can do that to herself, imagine what she's capable of doing to anybody else. And we've already seen plenty of what she's capable of doing to anybody else. Lord Boreal, anybody? So yes, Lyra is her daughter. Yes, Coulter has said, I love my daughter more than anything and she's all that matters to me. Absolutely. And I believe her. I believe Coulter does love her daughter. But that doesn't mean Lyra's not in danger when she's around Coulter. Because Coulter herself is not even sure what Coulter is capable of. And that is what makes her such a scary villain. And that is what makes Lyra's predicament, trapped in that box as we cut to black, so damn frightening. Season 3, when will you get here? I don't know, but I promise you, join me back here on Thumb Together TV, and we'll talk about it whenever it comes out. Hopefully by then, we won't have a plague, and we can go outside and play. Remember that? Anyway, that has been His Dark Materials, Aesahattr, which is another thing where we'll find out what that word means in Season 3, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching my reviews of His Dark Materials. I'll see you all here next time, and until then, adios.